Your grandfather kept an old license plate nailed to the wall of his garage, above the workbench, where he rebuilt carburetors on Saturday mornings. He never explained why he kept it, and if that plate had a single digit on it, it may have been worth $675,000. The honest answer for almost every old license plate ever made is nothing. The average vintage plate sells for about $10 at a flea market, maybe $20 if it has a nice color. Most old plates are worth less than the gas it takes to drive them to the dump. The porcelain on most early plates has cracked and flaked away. The leather on pre-state plates has rotted to dust. The brass numbers have been pried off and sold for scrap, but a tiny fraction of old license plates is worth more than the car they were once bolted to. The difference between a $10 plate and a $60,000 plate is measured in details that almost nobody outside a small group of obsessive collectors has ever heard of. The story of how an old license plate became one of the rarest objects in American collecting begins in Massachusetts in 1903. In 1903, Massachusetts became the first state in the United States to issue license plates. The plates were made of iron covered in porcelain enamel. The background was a deep cobalt blue. The letters and numbers were white. They were beautiful. They were also fragile. Drop one on a concrete floor, and the porcelain shattered like dinnerware. That is why so few survive. The very first plate, stamped with the number 1, was issued to a man named Frederick Tudor. Tudor was a member of the old Boston merchant family and was working with the Massachusetts Highway Commission when the automobile department was created. His descendants still hold the active registration on Massachusetts plate number 1 today. More than 120 years later, the same family still drives the same number. Massachusetts porcelain plates from 1903 through 1907 are among the most collectible plates in the world. A 1903 plate, in near perfect condition, porcelain intact, no cracks, no chips, original colors, can sell for thousands of dollars. But condition is everything. One chip in the porcelain, one hairline crack, one rust spot where the iron shows through, and the value collapses. In 1912, Mississippi issued its first state license plates. They were porcelain, like the Massachusetts plates, but with a distinctive design peculiar to that state. Collectors value a 1912 Mississippi plate at around $35,000. But the real story is 1913. In 1913, Mississippi issued a second year of porcelain plates. The state required drivers to display them for only 90 days. Then the state ordered every single plate collected and destroyed. Officials wanted them gone. Every 1913 Mississippi plate was supposed to be melted down or smashed and thrown away. For more than 70 years, collectors believed none had survived. The 1913 Mississippi plate was considered a myth, a plate that existed only in government records. No photograph existed. No example had ever been seen. Then in 1985, a license plate collector named Dr. Roy Klotz Jr. placed a classified ad in a Jackson, Mississippi newspaper. He was looking for old plates. Someone responded. They had found a 1913 Mississippi plate. It had spent more than 7 decades in an attic, in a box, forgotten. It was one of only 2 known to exist in the world today. That plate is now valued at $50,000. It is worth more than most new cars. It was supposed to be destroyed. It survived because someone forgot to throw it away. In 1921, Alaska was not yet a state. It was a United States territory, vast and sparsely populated, with more caribou than cars. That year, the territorial government issued its first license plates. They were made of flat metal with embossed numbers painted white on a dark background. Almost nobody registered a vehicle. The roads barely existed. There are only 4 known examples of a 1921 Alaska plate in the world today. 4. In the year 2000, one of those 4 plates changed hands in a private sale for $40,000. It is now estimated to be worth more than $60,000. It is the most valuable standard issue American license plate in existence. Not a vanity plate, not a low number Delaware tag. A regular issue territorial plate from a place where almost nobody drove a car. The 1921 Alaska plate is valuable for exactly one reason: scarcity. 4 exist. The number of collectors who want one is larger than 4. That is the entire economics of rare license plates in one sentence. Nowhere in America do license plates work the way they work in Delaware. In Delaware, the lower the number on your license plate, the higher your social status. This is not a joke. This is not an exaggeration. This has been true for generations. Delaware issues black and white plates with very low numbers, and those numbers can be bought, sold, traded, and inherited. It is an open market for a government document, and it has been running for decades. In 2008, a Delaware license plate with the number 6, a black and white plate with a single digit, sold at auction for $675,000. That is more than the median price of a home in the United States for a license plate with one digit. The buyer was a real estate developer who had been collecting low-number Delaware plates for years. Number 9 had sold at a separate auction in 1994 for $185,000. Number 20 sold at auction in 2018 for $410,000. The lower the digit, the higher the price. That is the rule. This is not a story about rich people doing strange things with money. It is a story about how value is a shared story. A license plate is a piece of painted metal. It costs maybe $3 to manufacture. It is worth $675,000 because enough people in one small state decided that a low number means something. The plate did not change. The story around it did. The real story here is not about license plates. It is about what happens when nobody is paying attention. For most of the 20th century, license plates were not collectible. They were disposable. You turned them in when you sold the car. You threw them in the trash when the state sent new ones. The idea that an old license plate could be worth more than the car it came off would have sounded insane to everyone who ever pried one off a rusted bumper and tossed it into a corner of the garage. And then, slowly, a small group of collectors started paying attention. They studied the porcelain years. They catalogued the territorial issues. They tracked down the plates that state governments had ordered destroyed. They built a market that nobody else knew existed. That is the moment value hides, in the gap between what the world ignores and what a handful of obsessed people understand. Your grandfather's garage wall is probably covered in $10 plates. Probably. But probably is not the same as definitely. The plate that a collector paid $675,000 for looked exactly like every other old license plate nailed to every other garage wall in Delaware. It was dusty. It was forgotten. It had a single digit on it. Nobody looked at it twice until someone did. When is the last time you read the year and the state on the old license plate nailed to the wall in your garage? Subscribe to Money Fails. Real stories, real mistakes, real lessons. Your grandfather's license plate is probably worth about $10. But the plate that sold for $675,000 was worth $10 too, right up until the moment someone who knew what they were looking at read the number on the porcelain. When did you last look? See you in the next one.